a high-end restaurant with a beautiful night view. My beloved George opens a small box. Inside is a diamond ring. As I catch my breath, he smiles gently at me. "Will you marry me?" "Yes." I tear up at the proposal I had dreamed of. The ring he puts on my finger catches the light and glistens. It's a bit too ornate for my taste, but the fact that he chose it for me makes me gaze at it with delight. I wish I could take that ring from my past self and throw it as far as I can. Don't be fooled. He didn't choose that ring. His mom, who adores him, did. I am Meredith. I work as a nurse in the obstetrics department of a large hospital. The work is demanding, with no regard for morning or evening, especially during deliveries, but nothing can compare to the joy of hearing a baby's first cry. The relationships at work are good, and I have fulfilling days every day. As I focused on my work, I suddenly found myself nearing 30. I had always wanted to hold my own baby someday, so I started to feel a bit anxious about marriage. It was then that I met George, 5 years my senior, at a friend's party. Being with his always smiling and calm presence felt like a balm for my work-weary soul. Plus, he worked at City Hall, which suited my desire to continue working even after having children. I had, of course, told him that I wanted to keep working, and he had accepted it, saying, "2 incomes would help me too." I liked him, but there were a few things that bothered me. On our first anniversary date, I arrived at our meeting place to find George standing there in a suit, holding a bouquet of red roses. "What's with the outfit?" "Because today is a special day. Meredith, the past year of dating you has been the best of my life. Thank you for being with me." Same here." I accepted the bouquet with a forced smile. I love flowers, and I appreciated the gesture. But going to an amusement park with a bulky bouquet and a suit seemed over the top. I wanted to point this out, but his sincere smile kept me silent. In the end, I ended up touring the amusement park with a man in a suit carrying a bouquet, feeling embarrassed by all the attention we drew. Yes, George's sense of taste and common sense were often off from others. When he said we were going to dine at a high-end restaurant, I dressed in nice clothes and heels, but he took me to the beach to walk on the winter sand before dinner. For my 29th birthday, he gave me a life-size teddy bear, despite knowing I had no interest in stuffed animals. Even on ordinary days, he tried to give me branded gifts or treat me to things. Despite my lack of interest in brands and my insistence that we should split the costs since I earned as much as he did. But he wouldn't budge, saying, "I'm the man." However, the branded items weren't to my taste, and I ended up not knowing what to do with them. When I confided in my friends about my real concerns, they said things like, "Are you bragging?" and "He just wants to make you happy." Hearing that made me feel like I was the one being unkind, rejecting someone who was trying to be nice. Even though his taste and common sense were off, he wasn't bothering anyone, and it was clear he was kind to me. So when George proposed at a high-end restaurant with an ornate engagement ring that wasn't quite to my liking, I was still happy and immediately said yes. But looking back, I should have addressed the unease I felt then and pursued it further. When I visited his family's condominium for a family meeting, my mother-in-law, Olivia, greeted me with a beaming smile. "Meredith, it's so nice to finally meet you. I've been wanting to see you." Come on in, come on in. I bought a cake to celebrate with you." I was nervous, expecting a stereotypical mother-in-law who wouldn't like her son's wife, but Olivia's warm welcome caught me off guard. George watched us with a smile. The cake Olivia had prepared was topped with an abundance of fruit, and the plates and cups for tea looked expensive. Despite my nervousness, Olivia and my father-in-law, Hector, spoke kindly to me, clearly happy about the marriage. I felt relieved, thinking I could get along with these people. My heart relaxed in the warm atmosphere, and I reached for a fork to eat the cake. Olivia's eyes sparkled as she saw the ring on my left hand. "That ring is beautiful, isn't it? Do you like it, Meredith?" "Huh?" I was too stunned to understand, and George added with a smile. "Mom helped me pick out the engagement ring." "What? He picked out her engagement ring with his mom?" My mind couldn't process George's shocking revelation. Misinterpreting my surprise as delight, Olivia continued with another bombshell. "I advised him on everything: the roses and suit for your first anniversary, the teddy bear for your birthday. You see, he's smart and kind, but not used to girls, so I taught him everything to make you happy." Olivia recounted her stories like they were feats of heroism. Listening to her, it seemed like she knew everything about our dates, down to the smallest detail. While staring in shock at George, I saw him nodding nostalgically as he listened to Olivia's story. His attitude of accepting it as if it were natural made me almost think, is it normal for a mom to meddle in her son's relationship? But seeing Hector's bewildered expression snapped me back to reality. When our eyes met, Hector awkwardly tried to reprimand Olivia. "Olivia, that's just not right. It might make sense if he were still in middle school, but George is 35. "Oh, Hector. Children are always children, no matter how old they get. They need their mom's guidance. Come on. Meredith, you wouldn't like it if your boyfriend's mom was meddling, right?" You don't mind, do you, Meredith? If I hadn't advised him, George wouldn't have been able to plan those wonderful dates or propose so perfectly." "Well, Right, Meredith? Don't you think so?" Olivia pressed me intensely, her eyes sparkling. I wasn't strong enough to push back against her. Ha 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 ha. I could only manage a strained, ambiguous laugh. Everything I had accepted, thinking George had put so much effort into, was actually orchestrated by his mom. That realization quickly deflated my spirits. Could I really marry this man? I felt overwhelmed with doubt, but having already accepted his proposal, it felt hard to back out. Still, I managed to plead. "Please don't discuss our matters with Olivia." But he seemed completely unable to understand. Instead, "Mom is advising for your sake, and you're being mean to her," he accused me. At that time, work became exceptionally busy, and I asked him if we could postpone the wedding planning a bit. But he and Olivia kept pushing forward, saying, "We'll prepare a wonderful wedding for you." Desperately, I tried to convey that I have my own wishes too. But he wouldn't listen, saying, "Mom said girls are happier with surprises." Reluctantly, I pleaded with Olivia, "Please consider my wishes too." She dismissed me, saying, "It's better to leave these things to the in-laws. Don't worry, we'll make it a wonderful wedding." It was like talking to an alien. The day before the wedding, George and Olivia showed up at my workplace, essentially dragging me to City Hall to get our marriage certificate. I felt almost forced into becoming George's wife. The wedding day itself felt like a nightmare. The ceremony went smoothly, and we moved on to the party. Although George and Olivia's arrangements were a bit outdated and overly lavish, they were still within acceptable limits. Feeling somewhat relieved, I stepped out to change outfits. Then, the MC made an astonishing announcement. "And now, the groom and the groom's mother will also step out for their outfit change." What? I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I had never heard such a thing at any wedding before. I looked back at the venue to see Olivia, hand in hand with George, leaving the room with a beaming smile. She noticed my gaze and winked at me before disappearing into the changing room. Stunned, I was hurried by the attendants to change into my colored dress and re-enter the venue with the groom. But, Instead of just George and me, it was George, Olivia, and me. It wasn't me but Olivia linking arms with the groom. Olivia, who had been wearing a black dress, was now wearing a dress in the same color as mine. As we re-entered the hall, the guests were visibly shocked, watching Olivia happily show off her dress. When we were choosing Meredith's dress, I couldn't resist getting one for myself. Then George said, "Mom, you should wear it too." I'm so lucky to have such a filial son and daughter-in-law, Olivia declared, tears of joy streaming down her face as George patted her back proudly. The guests, speechless from the bizarre scene, all turned their eyes to me. This couldn't be happening. I shook my head desperately, not caring if it messed up my hair. The rest of the reception was equally horrendous. Olivia performed a solo song, and George's letter to me was over 10 pages long. Hector seemed just as blindsided by Olivia and George's antics and looked helplessly confused the entire time. After the wedding, guests gave me sympathetic looks as they took their parting gifts. My parents told me to come home if I needed to and left with somber expressions. Hector, looking exhausted, saw off George's relatives who had come from afar. Despite the chaos, Olivia and George remained exuberant. That was a wonderful wedding. It was worth all the planning we did together, Olivia said. Thanks to you, Mom, it became an unforgettable event for everyone, George replied. Indeed, no one would ever forget a wedding where the mother-in-law had an outfit change. Next week, George and Meredith are off to Europe for their honeymoon, right? I wish I could join you to see the Arc de Triomphe in Paris. Olivia sighed dreamily. Yes, Paris is a place many dream of visiting. With a weary mind, I was thinking as if it were someone else's problem when George casually said something outrageous. Would you like to join us, Mom? What? What is this man talking about? I glared at George, trying to convey that this was not okay. However, both Olivia and George were too lost in their dreamy thoughts to notice. Really? But wouldn't I be intruding on your honeymoon? Olivia glanced at me. Of course it's fine. Mom is an important part of our family. Right, Meredith? No, it's absolutely not fine. Having a mother-in-law come along on the honeymoon is absolutely out of the question. Absolutely. I wanted to scream my objection right then, but I restrained myself, trying to come up with a rational argument instead. But all our reservations are for twins, so it might be difficult to add another room for Olivia at this point. Oh, is that so? But I really want to go. Can't you do something about it? Olivia looked disappointed but persistent. Then George said something even more outrageous. Meredith, can't you give up your spot for Mom this time? What? He knows how much I've always wanted to go to Europe, evidenced by the numerous travel books on my bookshelf. Yet, he's willing to trample on my dreams just to please his mom? No way. This is your important honeymoon. Right, Meredith? We owe Mom a lot, don't we? The wedding was great thanks to her. So, I want to take this opportunity to be filial. George! The two of them gazed at each other dreamily. Their supposedly considerate behavior towards me was actually just them using me. Something snapped inside me. Oh, forget it. This man never cherished me for my sake. He did it because Olivia instructed him to. He might be the perfect son, but just imagining building a life with this man gave me chills. I'll let them have it, the honeymoon and their precious son. It's better to get divorced early than to stay in this family. Go ahead, the two of you. Enjoy your trip. When I flatly told them, Olivia and George's faces lit up unmistakably. Oh? Really? That's too kind of you, Olivia said, pretending to be hesitant. "No worries, I can travel whenever I want in the future," I replied with a smile. Their eyes welled up with what seemed to be tears of gratitude. "Meredith, I knew you were the right choice," George said, squeezing my hand tightly. "Thank you, Meredith. George and I will have a great time." "What would you like as a souvenir?" Olivia asked. "Nothing at all. Just enjoy yourselves to the fullest," I said, still smiling. "Meredith, truly, thank you. If it's all right, could you look after Dad while we're away?" George said, his cheeks flushed with excitement. I maintained a benevolent smile, ensuring my expression didn't waver. The next day, Hector rushed to my workplace, his face pale. "Meredith, what's going on? Olivia's saying she's going on a honeymoon with George. Have they lost their minds? And you agreed to it?" I took the bewildered Hector to a quiet room and explained George and Olivia's attitude from the previous day, as well as my intention to get a divorce. Hector hung his head low, looking defeated. "I'm sorry. I knew Olivia doted on George, but I never imagined it would be this bad. I too have been considering leaving." "What?" I was surprised. "Oh, don't worry, it's not because of you, Meredith. Olivia and I have clashed many times over our different parenting philosophies and her extravagant spending habits. I've been enduring it, thinking I'd wait until George got married, but this is too much." I nodded in understanding. It was clear that no reasonable person could put up with such outrageous behavior from their spouse and son. If Hector was also considering a divorce, it would make things easier. "In that case, Hector, let's take them down together." I whispered my plan for revenge into Hector's ear. A week later, Olivia and George happily set off on their 10-day honeymoon. After seeing them off, Hector and I each moved out. We changed the locks on the condominium and handed the new keys over to a certain individual. 10 days later, Olivia and George, looking fresh and radiant, returned to the in-laws' house. Hector and I secretly watched them from the neighboring couple's apartment, who were aware of the situation. "Huh? The key isn't working," Olivia said, puzzled. "What?" George inserted the key again, but it still wouldn't turn. "This is strange. Let's call Dad or Meredith to open it," George suggested. George pressed the doorbell. Suddenly, the door of the in-laws' house opened, and a giant man, almost 6.6 feet tall, appeared. "What the?" "Hello, can I help you?" the man said. "What?" George and Olivia looked up at him, their faces showing utter surprise. Who are you?" George stammered. "Bob," the man replied. "Bob? Why? Where's Dad? Where's Meredith? This is my parents' house. This is my parents' house, right?" George, thoroughly confused, glanced at the room number. Olivia, meanwhile, was trembling in panic behind George due to the sudden appearance of this massive man. "What? What's going on? Where's my home?" she shrieked. "Who are you? What do you want?" "My hobby is collecting various guns. Would you like to see them?" "What?" Ignoring the now petrified George and Olivia, Bob went back inside and came out with an actual gun. Faced with the terrifying combination of a strange man, giant, and gun, George and Olivia turned pale. "I've been wanting to try it out. How about a test shot? I'll make sure not to hit you." "Well, what?" "It's all right, just one shot." "No." As Bob aimed the gun, George screamed and ran off at full speed, not even glancing back at the terror-stricken Olivia, who had collapsed in fear. George, well, wait, I can't move, my back. Are you all right, ma'am? Bob asked, keeping up the act. Please spare me. Just let me live. Olivia cried, tears and snot streaming down her face as she crawled away. Once George and Olivia had completely disappeared, I, Hector, and our neighbor, who had been stifling her laughter, stepped out. Meredith, I guess it worked out, Bob said, holding the fake gun he had crafted himself. Thank you, Bob. I appreciate you going along with this farce. No problem. Glad to be of help, Bob replied with a grin, showing his pearly white teeth. Bob and I had been in the same track and field club in high school. When I heard he was recently married and looking for a place to live, I proposed the idea to Hector, who had decided to divorce Olivia. I suggested that while Olivia and George were away, we sell the condo to Bob and move out without their knowledge. This way, Hector wouldn't have to worry about Olivia finding out his new address. Of course, I also canceled the lease on the apartment I was supposed to share with George and moved elsewhere. George and Olivia's belongings were now safely stored in a trunk room. Real estate transactions are not simple, so the condominium is still in Hector's name rather than Bob's. But Bob, moved by my miserable story, decided to help us get back at them a bit by setting up the prank of having a stranger living in their house upon their return from the trip. I didn't think they'd be this shocked, I said. I'd be surprised too if I came back from a trip and found someone else living in my home. But are you sure about this? It's such a lovely place, Bob replied. Hector nodded calmly to the humble Bob. Yes, I don't need it anymore. It's better if it serves you and your wife well for your new life. Just be aware that Olivia and George might cause trouble again. Leave that to me. Thanks to him, I felt a rare sense of satisfaction. Naturally, George and Olivia were in a state of total panic afterward. Our smartphones were bombarded with calls from them all day, but we pretended not to notice. The next day, we finally met them at a cafe. George and Olivia, looking exhausted from a night of panic, were visibly weary. When I told them I wanted a divorce, George's jaw dropped, and Olivia screamed in disbelief. Are you out of your mind? We did so much for you. What more do you want? There's no better mother-in-law than me. Exactly. Both Mom and I have done everything for you, Meredith. Roses, rings, fancy restaurants, the wedding, you name it. We provided everything for you. I responded calmly to their accusations. All of that was forced on me. I told you many times that I didn't want it. I wanted things that you had thought of just for me, even if they were cheap or unfashionable. I wanted you to listen to what I wanted. That's so selfish. If you call this selfish, then I can't do this with you. You little. Olivia's lips trembled with rage. Disappointed, Hector sighed deeply. I also want to end my marriage with you, Olivia. Hector! I can't stand your wasteful habits and overbearing personality any longer. I endured it for George's sake, but that was a mistake. You turned George into a terrible person too, and for that, I am truly sorry to Meredith. Well, what? Hector! George, now rejected even by his own father, looked on the verge of tears. Meredith, what did I do wrong? I just wanted to make you happy because I love you. Hard to believe that coming from someone who wanted to take his mom on the honeymoon instead of his wife. Ugh! The only people you care about are yourself and your mom. You only wanted to please her and kept watching her reactions. Actually, you might not even care about Olivia, considering you abandoned her and ran away alone yesterday. Oh! Sweat started to trickle down George's forehead, as Olivia stared up at him, shocked. George. No, Mom, yesterday I was just scared out of my mind. People reveal their true selves in moments like that. I can't build a family with someone who only thinks about themselves. Wait, Meredith! I won't ask for any compensation in the divorce, but you need to cover the costs of the honeymoon and the wedding. Those were for you and your mom, not for me. Wait, Meredith! Let's meet with a lawyer next time. Meredith! George's pleading voice didn't touch my heart at all. We got married, but I was just glad I found out his true nature before we had kids. After that, George and I got divorced. Even though George was still dragging his feet, with the help of our lawyer and Hector, we managed to file the divorce papers. George's co-workers and bosses, who had seen him clinging to his mom at the wedding, stepped in and convinced him to let his wife go, which was very effective. There was a dispute over the honeymoon and wedding expenses, but Hector sold the in-laws' house and used the money to cover the costs as an advance inheritance. It took over 6 months for Olivia and Hector's divorce to be finalized. Olivia, who had been living a luxurious life as a housewife on Hector's money since their marriage, clung desperately to Hector. But as the fight dragged on, the costs increased and the assets dwindled. Realizing this, Olivia reluctantly signed the papers, agreeing to split the assets evenly. After that, George moved in with Olivia and married a young woman Olivia had introduced him to, someone who shared her interests. Apparently, she was a shopping buddy of Olivia's and, of course, had a penchant for overspending. George had a stable job as a public servant, but it didn't pay much. The two women spent more than double his monthly income, and the household quickly fell into financial trouble. Because of his reputation as a mama's boy, George's work environment became uncomfortable, and he couldn't handle the harsh reality, eventually losing his mind and quitting his job. The debt on the former in-laws' house kept piling up, and eventually, Olivia started borrowing money from shady places. I thought they could still turn things around if they sought help, but I couldn't imagine such stubborn people doing that. Meanwhile, I threw myself into my work and even got a midwifery qualification. Recently, I helped deliver Bob and his wife's baby. With a smile, the tearful Bob said, "We'll raise this child well." Seeing the sparkle of life gave me purpose every day. Speaking of which, I recently asked my new boyfriend, "Did you pick out these earrings yourself?" He looked puzzled and replied, "I thought you'd like them, so I bought them." I was relieved when he laughed. The design was my style and beautiful, but imagining him thoughtfully choosing them for me made me love him even more. Wearing those earrings, I ponder where we should go together next and enjoy life every day. Divorce. It's a gray divorce. Finally, I can get rid of you. I've taken care of you all these years, and I'll be taking the entire retirement allowance. Upon returning home, my husband, Anthony, said these words to me. "Divorce? What do you mean by taking the entire retirement allowance?" I was about to congratulate him on reaching his retirement day, but his words shocked me to my core. But his tirade didn't stop there. Of course, I'm going to use the retirement allowance however I want. I've finally been freed from the shackles of that tedious government job. Thinking about being free from you makes today a real celebration. What? I was stunned into silence by his selfishness. He continued his harsh words, aiming them at me. "You're fired, fired. Housekeeper fired. Get out. I've been supporting you all these years because you couldn't hold a job. Be grateful for that. Here's the divorce papers. I've already signed them. Write your name and get out." Thinking about how many years I had spent with such a man made me feel pathetic. I am Nancy, 62 years old. Due to a chronic illness since childhood, I was unable to have children. I married Anthony, 3 years my senior, when I was 30, and we spent 32 years together. When I was in elementary school, I often had coughing fits that wouldn't stop and caused breathing difficulties. My parents took me to the hospital, and I was diagnosed with bronchial asthma. Treatment started immediately, but the symptoms never fully disappeared. Despite this, my condition wasn't severe, and I was able to graduate from elementary, middle, and high school. After high school, I even got a job as an office worker. My bronchial asthma worsened when I turned 25. Even slight physical exertion caused breathing difficulties, and I couldn't continue working without using an inhaler. The trouble I caused at work led me to resign when I was 28. Although I managed to get disability benefits, my only income came from that, and I had to move back in with my parents. Things took another turn for the worse when my doctor told me that pregnancy could worsen my asthma. I was an only child born to elderly parents. Worried about my future, as I couldn't work or have children, my parents discussed my situation with various relatives. That's when my kind Aunt Betty came up with the idea of introducing me to a man. "Nancy, there's a nice man with a government job. What do you think?" "But I have a chronic illness. I can't work, and I can't have children." "That's okay. I told him about your situation, and he still wants to meet you. I highly recommend him." "Well, if you say so." Because of my illness, I never considered marriage. However, feeling guilty for worrying my parents and thinking that if there was a man willing to marry me despite my illness, I should at least meet him, I agreed to the introduction. "This is Anthony. And this is Nancy." Hi. I'm Anthony." Anthony, introduced by my Aunt Betty, made a quiet and reserved first impression. "Nice to meet you. I'm Nancy." "Nice to meet you." Throughout our meeting, Anthony never put on a friendly face. But, with my illness making me feel inferior and thinking it was a miracle that someone would be interested in me, I started dating him with marriage in mind. While dating, Anthony wasn't particularly friendly and sometimes showed signs of pride. However, despite his shortcomings, he seemed like too good a man for someone with my chronic illness. Because of that, I married him the year I turned 30. Even after marriage, Anthony never became more affectionate, but I noticed he became talkative after drinking. Most of the time, he just complained about work. "Damn it. They always blame everything on me. Sure, I made a mistake, but it wasn't all my fault." Listening to his complaints, I felt he had a tendency to blame others for his mistakes, which probably annoyed his colleagues. Still, he was the one supporting our household. Knowing I couldn't have children, I was grateful he never complained about it. I devoted myself to household chores to make his work life as pleasant as possible. However, as the years went by, he seemed to lose interest in me. Our conversations were mostly about practical matters, and if we did talk, it was me listening to his complaints about work. We never went out together, and I realized he didn't mention the fact that I couldn't have children because he simply didn't like kids. I tried to make up for it by preparing his favorite meals and giving him thoughtful gifts on his birthday and Christmas. I also tried to engage him in conversation, but it never reached his heart. He never gave me gifts or words of appreciation. I often felt like just a housekeeper. Yet, there were no other problems, and he was supporting me. One time, while talking to friends I met at my floral art class, they said their relationships with their husbands were similar. "My husband and I hardly talk." "But isn't that normal?" "Same here. We only talk about the kids." "Is that so?" I don't know much about other families, so I was worried. "It's normal. It's not just your family, Nancy." Apart from the friends I met at the floral art class, I had no one else to consult. Hearing about other couples' lives made me realize that marriage might just be like this. Around the time we had been married for 15 years, both my parents passed away in quick succession. With their passing, our connections with relatives diminished significantly. It was around this time that Anthony's behavior started to become strange. Even with our limited conversations, after being married for so long, I understood how he was at work. Anthony, who worked at a government office, wasn't the type to strive for higher positions. He didn't socialize with his colleagues much and left work right on time every day. He was probably quite isolated at work. He started coming home late, claiming it was due to overtime or socializing with his boss. One day, while preparing his suit for dry cleaning, I found a long, light brown hair on the collar. My hair was black, so it couldn't be mine. The suit also smelled of a sweet perfume. Though he said it was just socializing with his boss, I couldn't shake the thought of infidelity. A single hair is not enough to prove infidelity. Still, I couldn't shake the thought of Anthony having an affair. I spent most of my time at home, aside from the floral art class and shopping. Having done office work before, I was used to detailed tasks. Since that day, I began meticulously recording his behavior. Days that felt off and why. Days he came home late. Days he was unusually cheerful. After some time, I found red lipstick on one of his shirts. When I asked a friend from the floral art class, she said no club woman would do that. She suggested it was a declaration of war from a mistress to the legal wife. A husband who had no other enjoyment might have started an affair and lost all sense of boundaries. My friend's words struck a chord with me. Indeed, he had few pleasures. His main joy was having a drink with dinner. If he had started an affair after turning 48, it seemed plausible. That might be true. If he starts dipping into the household funds for his affair, you need to be firm. Understood. Soon after, Anthony started staying out all night without any notice. It wasn't just that. As my friend had warned, he began withdrawing money from our joint bank account without telling me. I wasn't working, but I made an effort to ensure Anthony could work comfortably. Our household funds belonged to both of us. I couldn't tolerate him using it without permission, so I confronted him. Coming home without notice, what's going on? What's it to you? It's just a guy thing. Money is being withdrawn from our joint account. Is that also a guy thing? I earned that money. I can spend it however I want. I don't need to explain anything to you. Just keep doing the housework. With his dismissive response, I lost all trust in him. From then on, I meticulously recorded the days money was withdrawn from our account and the days he came home late. One day, while picking up Anthony's wallet that had fallen in front of the closet, its contents spilled out, revealing a card and a discount coupon from a suspiciously named hotel. I was appalled, wondering if this was what he meant by socializing with the guys. My distrust for him reached its peak, so that night, while he was in the shower, I decided to check his mobile phone. Anthony somehow believed I was not tech-savvy, but that was far from the truth. I handled all our phone contracts and even had his phone registered in my name. Back then, phones didn't have fingerprint or facial recognition, only a 4-digit passcode. He had set it to the last 4 digits of our home phone number. He had unlocked his phone in front of me several times, so it wasn't hard for me to access it. As expected, the phone only had call and short message features, making it easy to find evidence of his infidelity. There were messages exchanged with multiple women. Most seemed to be club women, but there was one woman he frequently sent messages to. From the content, it was clear she was his favorite. What is this discount coupon for a hotel? That's none of your business. It's adult stuff. Stop whining about everything I do. After that, my relationship with him became completely cold. His infidelity went beyond limits, with large amounts of money spent on his mistress, leaving us unable to buy a house or save any money. In the midst of this, I once brought up the topic of divorce. Humph. You think you can live alone without anyone to rely on? You can't even work. Disability benefits alone won't support you. Just keep being a housekeeper. If I get alimony and a share of the assets in the divorce, I can live on my own. Don't be stupid. You know how much we have saved. Fine, I'll pay you alimony little by little, in long-term installments until I die. Anthony only stayed married to me because he wanted a convenient, non-complaining housekeeper. But for someone who couldn't work, that might be the same for me. Thinking that, I couldn't argue back and felt pathetic. Not knowing what to do, I sought help from my friends at the floral art class. Time passed, and the day of his retirement arrived. Divorce. It's a gray divorce. Finally, I can get rid of you. I've taken care of you all these years, and I'll be taking the entire retirement allowance. Upon returning home, Anthony said these words to me. Divorce? What do you mean by taking the entire retirement allowance? Despite our cold marriage, I wanted to congratulate him on his retirement. And yet, this is what I got. Yeah, the retirement allowance I earned from years of hard work. I'll use it to live with my mistress. She's been waiting for this. A mistress? That's such a selfish thing to say. What are you talking about? Of course, I'm going to use the retirement allowance however I want. I've finally been freed from the shackles of that tedious job. Thinking about being free from you makes today a real celebration. What? I was stunned into silence by his selfishness. Anthony continued with his harsh words. You're fired. Housekeeper fired. Get out. I've been supporting you all these years because you couldn't hold a job. Be grateful for that. Here, the divorce papers. I've already signed them. Write your name and get out. Our savings weren't substantial. Anthony was counting on his retirement allowance to start a new life with his mistress. Smiling broadly, I faced him. Understood. Thank you for everything up to today. So, I won't be seeing your face anymore from now on. I snatched the divorce papers from Anthony and signed them immediately. Then I carefully put them into my pocket. Now the divorce is finalized. Noticing the change in my demeanor, Anthony stammered. Yeah, that's right. Turning my back to Anthony, I took a large envelope out of the closet. Let's have a look at this. I slammed the envelope onto the table, causing its contents to spill out. Invoices, alimony, what the hell is this amount? It exceeds my retirement allowance. What's going on? On the table was the alimony invoice from the divorce settlement. Seeing the amount, he raised his voice in anger. Rather than me explaining, let the lawyer do it. Lawyer! Ignoring Anthony's shock, I opened the door to the adjacent room. Nice to meet you. I'm from the law firm. There stood a lawyer in a suit, offering his business card. 17 years ago, the day after I first talked about divorce with Anthony, friends from the floral art class came to check on me. From what you've said, if you divorce now, you won't get much money. If possible, wait until your husband retires and take all the retirement allowance. That sounds like a good idea. Your husband doesn't seem to want to leave you immediately. Oh, Nancy, my brother works at a law firm. It's best to involve a lawyer early on, and I can introduce you at a friend's rate. I think I'll ask for your help. When I went to the law firm my friend introduced, they advised me to gather solid evidence of infidelity if I wasn't divorcing immediately to secure a favorable outcome in the future. They also offered comprehensive support for what I couldn't manage on my own. 17 years passed. The total amount he had spent on his mistress was substantial. The total alimony exceeded his retirement allowance. Recently, when I checked his phone, I saw messages with his mistress about telling me about the divorce right after he retired, so I had the lawyer come to my home in advance. The amount he spent on his mistress from household funds was about $1,000 a month, totaling over $200,000 over 17 years. Adding $30,000 for prolonged infidelity, the total exceeds Anthony's retirement allowance. Anthony, clutching the detailed invoice I had slammed down, trembled as the lawyer explained. "Wait a minute. There's no proof I spent that much from the household funds. And no proof of a 17-year-long affair. I've been recording all withdrawals from the joint account used for the affair for 17 years. I also have records of communications between Anthony and his mistress. Copies of the evidence are in the envelope." "You looked at my phone without permission?" "It's not your phone. It's my phone that I contracted and lent to you." "So it's my phone. This is ridiculous." "You probably saw me as a convenient, compliant wife. That's why you didn't care if I found out about your mistress or the money you spent. That was your mistake. I am a person, too. I have feelings." It was the first time I had shown such a strong attitude toward him. He was speechless with surprise. "What is this?" "Rest assured, I'll file the divorce papers first thing tomorrow." "Damn it." Pathetically, Anthony spat those words and fled the house. To graduate from my life with him, I immediately moved out the next day and started living alone. With the help of friends from the floral art class, all moving preparations had been made. I also submitted the divorce papers, officially severing ties with him, which made me feel immensely relieved. I changed my phone number and didn't tell him my new address. He had no interest in my social circles, so he didn't know any of my friends' contact details. He wouldn't be able to contact me even if he wanted to. I had no intention of reaching out to him either. However, about a week after submitting the divorce papers, I received a call from the lawyer, who updated me on his situation. According to the lawyer, without his retirement allowance, his mistress left him. She had only been interested in the money he would bring. Even the other women he had been seeing had no interest in being with him. Anthony, with no money, was abandoned by everyone. Like me, he had no one to rely on. He had no close friends or family. His pension was limited due to club debts. Anthony told me about his situation, mixing it with complaints. He wanted to reconcile with you, but I told him it was impossible since the divorce papers were already submitted. There was no way I'd take him back. I didn't care about his struggles. I thanked the lawyer and hung up. I am happy now. My asthma attacks have decreased. It must be because the stress from living with him gone. With disability benefits, Social Security, and alimony, I can live comfortably without luxury. Also, I enjoy working remotely with a computer, reconnected to society after a long time. My friends from the floral art class were happy about my divorce, and we meet more often. My life used to rely on Anthony. But now, I am determined to live my life on my own terms. So, we're thinking of moving everyone over here once the third one's born, Sissy said in her straightforward manner. With the kids growing up, our current apartment is just too cramped. You want the kids to be able to run around freely, right? It's impossible to just move out of the blue. All the rooms are taken. Then, Tim and his family can leave. Tim doesn't have kids, so it should be fine, right? Just move out now. As Tim and I were baffled by her words, a scream from Tim's wife, Emily, filled the air. Sissy's eldest child, Isaac, had shot Emily with a water gun. I hurriedly took the water gun away from Isaac. Why would you do something like this? This lady is a bad person. That's why God is angry and made her unable to have children. Isaac didn't understand why he was being scolded and looked like he was about to cry. What have you been telling your child? It's not true. Emily just can't love children. If she really wanted kids, she wouldn't need fertility treatments to conceive, right? I'm living proof. I love my children, so God has blessed me with them. Meanwhile, Emily has been undergoing fertility treatments for years and still doesn't have any children. Enough. Emily stopped Tim's clenched fist, saying, "It's okay. All right. If Sissy insists that much, I'll leave this house. If you had just agreed from the start. You're nothing but a burden eating away at this house's wealth." After having her say, Sissy left with a satisfied look on her face. My name is Roseanne. I'm a housewife who turned 50 this year. Currently, I live in a two-family home with my husband, Christopher, and my son and his wife, making 4 of us. Tim has always been serious. After graduating from college, he got a job at a major trading company and married Emily, a colleague, when he was 23. Emily was 4 years older than Tim, so my husband and I were a bit surprised when we first heard about their marriage. But Emily was kind-hearted and good at cooking, so I was confident we could trust Tim with her. Tim and I will build a warm family together. I was an only child, so I'd like to have many children if possible. A lively family has always been my dream, Emily said, her eyes shining with hope for the future. However, they struggled to have children. As she approached 30, she became anxious and started fertility treatments with Tim's consultation. Despite not achieving their hoped-for results, Emily never forgot to smile, saying, "The weather is nice today, why don't we all do a barbecue?" and actively tried to build a relationship with us. Moved by her attitude, I felt a desire to protect Emily like my own daughter and encouraged her, "Don't rush your feelings. As long as you keep smiling like that, God will reward you someday." Speaking of kids, I've got another daughter. Tim's got 8 years on her. She was our long-awaited girl, born when I was 30. Her name's Sissy. Since Tim, it had been a while since we had a kid, so maybe that's why my husband and I spoiled her rotten. When Sissy and I went shopping, she'd point at toys on the shelves, saying, "Mom, I want that one. Buy it for me," with those adorable eyes, and I couldn't bring myself to say no, so I ended up buying them more often than not. As a result, Sissy grew up to be quite the little tyrant. After Tim got a job and became a working adult, he said, "Maybe it's time we teach Sissy about the harsh realities of the world, like common sense," with a serious look on his face, and I had to admit, "You're right. What you're saying makes sense." Reflecting on our parenting up until that point, I felt remorse. As Sissy became a high schooler, she started showing more rebellious attitudes towards us and started coming home late. "Do you have any idea what time it is?" I was worried sick. "I didn't ask you to worry about me," she'd retort, sighing as she took off her shoes, mumbling, "Ugh, I hate that teacher," seemingly making enemies of all the adults around her who tried to admonish her. "This is all our fault as parents," I'd fret, watching my daughter's sullen face. Then one day, Sissy, who had been playing games in her room, suddenly rushed out and ran into the bathroom. I thought she might be feeling sick, but I quickly realized that wasn't it. Could it be that you're? What's it to you? It's none of your business. That was the first time I realized my daughter was pregnant. You're still underage. You need to think more seriously about your life. Tim lectured Sissy, but it was too late since there was already a baby on the way. And as soon as Sissy graduated high school, she ran off with Sullivan, a young favorite from a nightclub, as if eloping. That girl, she's only 18. Can she really manage carrying a child into the future? When I voiced my worries, my husband Christopher, though worried about Sissy at heart, said, "Let her be. She's nothing but trouble," trying to sound indifferent. My fears were confirmed when Sissy, after having her first child, would come home saying, "Mom, I'm really struggling this month. Can you lend me $1,000? Asking for money. Sissy's husband, Sullivan, used to be the top earner at the club, but once the regulars heard he was married with a kid, his popularity cooled off and his sales plummeted. All these women, not even my girlfriends, complaining all the time. Got me fired, thanks to them. What a nuisance," he said, seemingly unbothered by his unemployment, laughing it off as if it were a joke. "Sullivan, what kind of work are you doing now?" Even when Christopher, acting as Sissy's dad, pressed him, Sullivan just laughed. "I'm looking for all sorts of jobs, but can't seem to find one that suits my charm. Maybe it's the environment? Care and food service aren't really for me." Don't blame the environment. You're a dad now. How do you plan to support your family? It's not the time to be picky about jobs. I couldn't help but get irritated by Sullivan's lackadaisical attitude and all talk, no action stance. When Tim chimed in, Sissy, already pregnant with their second child, snapped back, "That's lame, Tim. Being a boring salaryman like Tim is just too dull, right? Sullivan has dreams, unlike Tim, so don't make him do any boring job anyone can do. What's so boring about it? I'm just doing my best with what I can. It's with the salary I earn that we can support our family. Don't mock those who work hard for a living." Sissy mocking Tim, the salaryman, wasn't new. When Tim landed his job, Sissy, just starting middle school, said, "Being a salaryman is so lame. Can't even brag about it to friends," genuinely sighing in dismay. "So, what job would you have preferred?" "A musician, an idol, an influencer." "Oh, but with Tim, none of those are an option. Average looking and hopeless in life, Tim." Sissy made a comment that implied Tim was worthless. Years passed, but Sissy's mentality remained childlike. It seems we significantly misjudged how to raise our daughter. In front of a pregnant Sissy, Tim, shaking with anger, could only suppress his fury by hitting his own thigh. After Sissy had her energetic second child, she started mocking not only Tim but also his wife, Emily. "Did you start fertility treatments? Because I got pregnant with my second, did that make you panic? It's so funny. Aren't you over 30 now? Isn't it too late for you? Hey, Sissy. There are things that are okay to say and things that are not. That was way too harsh on Emily. Apologize to her." Despite Tim's outrage, Sissy, without any remorse, flaunted her second child to Emily, saying, "Look, the sad aunt who can't have kids." As the child started crying, Sissy mockingly comforted it. There, the aunt scared you, didn't she?" While Emily, trying to hold back tears, looked away. When Emily, feeling unbearable, stood up to leave the room, Sissy stopped her. "Emily, how much have you actually spent on fertility treatments? If you have that much money, wouldn't it be better spent on my children? It's such a bother, women who can't have children." Stop it, Sissy! Emily, you don't have to listen to her. Tim intervened. It's because Tim always coddles you that you haven't been able to have children. You better hurry up before you get too old. Emily cried quietly in another room, but I felt that any words from me would only pressure her more, so I couldn't bring myself to say anything. Listening to children's laughter should cheer you up, right, Mom? If only Emily could give you grandchildren, you wouldn't have anything to worry about. What a useless wife you got. Saying so, Sissy attempted to make me hold her baby right in front of Emily, who was watching. Then next month, I'll be counting on you for money again, Mom, she said, as if it was the most natural thing, taking with her an envelope containing $1,000. A year later, Emily's smile had gradually disappeared. I invited her to meals numerous times, hoping to see her bright smile again, but every time we saw a family with children at the restaurant, she sighed. Each time, I felt sorry, regretting that my good intentions had backfired. One day, Sissy visited us as usual. I have some really happy news for everyone today. What is it? Did Sullivan finally find a job? I asked, hoping slightly. No, it's not about that, Sissy said with a beaming smile, making a big deal out of it. In fact, I'm pregnant with a third child. Mom, you're going to have a third grandchild soon. Isn't that great, Mom? Having a daughter who's given you 3 energetic grandchildren. Sissy laughed triumphantly, glancing at Emily, who looked down. But before that, I've asked numerous times, has Sullivan found a job? Oh, come on. That doesn't matter right now. Praise me more for being pregnant with the third child. You're happy about it too, right, Mom? Worried about Emily's feelings, I couldn't genuinely rejoice over Sissy's pregnancy. Lost for words, I remained silent, and Christopher took over. How can you say earning a living doesn't matter? How are you going to live, having 3 children without working? This is unfair to the children being born. Christopher, of course, wasn't blaming the addition of another grandchild. The problem was that the father of the upcoming child had no intention of working. Whenever Sullivan visited with Sissy and the topic of work came up, he'd hastily excuse himself, saying, "I'm going out to buy cigarettes," and escape. Seeing this, my spouse and I would exchange looks and sigh, realizing he was still unemployed. So, we're thinking of moving here once the third child is born. Sissy spoke in such a casual tone that I almost missed it. Wait a minute. Move in here? Of course, where else would we move? This house is like my parental home, so there's no problem if we move in, right? Indeed, our family moved into this house when Tim and his wife got married, living together as a 2-family household. But this wasn't the home where Sissy was born. Besides, with 3 kids growing up, our current apartment will be too cramped. Kids need to run around and have fun, right? What do you think? It's impossible just to spring that on us. No matter how big the house is, all the rooms are occupied by the 4 of us living here, including Tim and his wife. There's no room for you to move in. It may sound cold, but it's the reality. I thought this would make Sissy give up and leave, but she glared at Emily menacingly and said, then, Tim and his family should just move out. Tim has a stable job and a salary, right? That should be enough for him. And since Tim doesn't have children, it's perfect, isn't it? There's no reason for him to cling to this house, so he and Emily should leave right now. As we were bewildered by Sissy's unreasonable demand, stop it. That's cold, stop. Suddenly, Emily's scream echoed. Sissy's eldest child, Isaac, had squirted water at Emily with a water gun. I hurriedly took the water gun from Isaac's hand. Why would you do such a thing? You must apologize if you've done something wrong. But Mom said this auntie is a bad person. That's why God is angry and made her unable to have children. Isaac genuinely believed it and couldn't understand why he was being scolded, his face on the verge of tears. I glared at Sissy, Isaac's mother, and said, "What have you been telling your child?" Well, it's the truth. Emily probably can't love children. If you really wish for children, you don't need to spend a lot of money on fertility treatments. Children are naturally conceived, right? I'm the proof. I love my children. That's why God is watching over me and blessed me with children. Unlike Emily, who's been wasting money on fertility treatments for years without any results. Do you see any children around her? Enough already. Teaching your child baseless, unscientific things and letting him harass others is wrong, even for a mother. Tim finally raised his voice, but far from being remorseful, Sissy retorted with a sneer, "It doesn't hurt or itch me what a childless Tim says." And maybe the reason Emily can't have children is partly due to Tim? Emily, with her fists clenched, desperately stopped Tim. It's okay. If Sissy insists so much, I'll leave this house. Contrary to the tearfully biting her lip Emily, Sissy smirked triumphantly. If you had been honest from the start, it would have been better. You're just a nuisance, eating away at the house's wealth, and left with a satisfied look after throwing insults at Emily until the very end. The house went quiet once Sissy and her family left. So, we've decided to leave. Thank you for everything, Tim said, bidding us goodbye. We need to decide where to live and prepare. As Tim and Emily got up to go to their room, I stopped them. Wait. We're coming with you. What? I can't forgive Sissy's terrible behavior either. So, we're also leaving this house. Looking at Christopher sitting next to me, he nodded firmly. I'm of the same mind. A month passed. Opening the bedroom curtains, I could see a vast vegetable garden through the window. Opening the window to let in the fresh air, I felt wrapped in a mysteriously gentle sensation, as if both my body and soul were being soothed. While not all the fields in view were ours, a local farmer had lent us a section for our family. Almost every day, someone from the neighborhood would leave vegetables they'd grown at our doorstep without a word. Roseanne, look! We got such a big cabbage! Emily exclaimed, her eyes shining like an innocent girl. Emily, who had been devastatingly upset the night Sissy demanded they leave, seemed to have regained some peace over the past month. Sometimes, watching the neighborhood children run around, Emily would smile wistfully, and I felt a tightness in my chest, knowing nothing I could say would help right now. There's a festival in the neighborhood next month. I'll try to help out with the preparations if I have time. Where's Dad? Christopher went to greet the chairman of the pest control group. There are a lot of boars around here, so Christopher wants to contribute to the local community. Our lives have completely changed since moving here, surrounded by rich nature, feeling refreshed in both body and soul compared to before. Tim, now allowed to work remotely, has set up a home office and is dedicated to his work. Though moving from the city to an unfamiliar countryside life has its inconveniences, being freed from the daily commute, Tim smiles peacefully. This place is heaven. My mobile phone rang, and when I looked at the screen, it was Sissy's name. Oh, it's been a month. How are you feeling? I asked as a mother concerned about her pregnant daughter's health, but on the other end of the line, Sissy was far from calm, yelling, "What's going on?" When I went to pack up and visit the family home today, there was a vacant sign in front of the house. You know something, right? Explain this to me. It's exactly as you saw. The house is currently vacant. If the sign is still there, it means no one has moved in yet, doesn't it? Why? Knowing we were going to move, is this some kind of harassment? It's not harassment. You were the one who told Emily to leave that house. I did say that, but that doesn't mean you all had to leave too, right? Where are you now? Where am I? I'm at my own home, of course. So, your own home isn't this house where I am now? What's going on? I decided to briefly explain the situation up to this point. A month after Sissy made the unreasonable demand for Emily to leave the house, I moved to a new home with Tim and his wife. The home was previously occupied by elderly relatives who are now in a facility, allowing us to rent it. When we were looking for a new place to live and asked around, Christopher's cousin mentioned a vacant house. I just wanted Tim and his family to leave. But why did you all have to leave as well? Do you dislike me that much? Is that woman who can't have children so important? We couldn't forgive your words. There was silence on the other end of the call. You mocked Emily, who is trying hard with fertility treatments, but you too were born thanks to fertility treatment. What? I got married at 20 and had Tim at 22. Despite the fear surrounding my first childbirth, fortunately, Tim was born without any issues and grew up healthy. When Tim started kindergarten and I began to feel a bit more relaxed about parenting, I started thinking about having a second child. The trigger was Tim seeing a friend's younger sister and saying, "I want a brother or sister too." Christopher and I thought it would be nice to have another child since two would make things more lively, and at 27, I thought I still had plenty of time to have and raise another child. However, despite our efforts, getting pregnant again didn't happen as quickly as we hoped, and we started to feel a bit anxious, so we consulted with an obstetrician who suggested fertility treatments. We followed the doctor's advice and adjusted our lifestyle, but despite our efforts, there were no signs of pregnancy, and I began to feel desperate as I approached 30. When I visited the clinic for a checkup, I saw a woman with a swollen belly, a young boy cuddling up to her, talking to the baby about to be born. While I found it heartwarming, I couldn't help but think, why not me, as my thoughts inevitably drifted to a darker place. Christopher tried to reassure me, "Don't worry so much." But if we keep waiting, it'll only get harder to have children. Christopher never snapped back at me. Instead, he would smile quietly and hug me gently. On my 30th birthday, feeling something was off, I rushed to the bathroom and found a positive result on a pregnancy test, leading us to the hospital. Congratulations, you're pregnant. That year, we were blessed with you. Thank you. I'm so glad to finally meet you, Sissy. Sissy, I'm your big brother. Let's get along. I was truly happy when you were born. Not just me, but Christopher and Tim. We all celebrated your arrival. Yet, you said such terrible things to Emily, who's struggling with fertility treatments. I just couldn't forgive you. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know I was born through fertility treatments. I'll change and reflect. Please forgive me. Can we come back? That's impossible. We've already left that house, and it wasn't ours to begin with. What do you mean it wasn't ours? That house was rented to us at a low cost by Emily's dad for our sake. You might not have known, but we paid rent every month. I wasn't told about this. What are we going to do now? We've already given up our apartment. We have nowhere to live. There's a place right in front of you. It's vacant, so that's fortunate for you, Sissy. All right, I'll live in this house. But a month later, The rent is too high. Isn't there something wrong with this house? Is that so? We had a special deal because of Emily, but the actual rent is usually high. It has a large backyard suitable for barbecues, you know? Don't talk like it's someone else's problem. You know, right, Mom? Sullivan has no income. How can we afford such high rent, not even for a month? That's your problem, isn't it? I can't do anything about it. Can't you lend me just the money for the rent? You do think of me as your dear daughter, right? It's impossible. Do you have any idea how much money we've lent you already? Because of you, we've lost our savings for retirement. Even if we had the money, we wouldn't lend it to you. Somehow, Sissy found out where Emily was receiving her medical treatments and ambushed her at the clinic. You figured out this place pretty well, didn't you? It was easy to find out. In a place like this, there's only one clinic. But Emily, please, I'm begging you. Ask your dad to reduce our rent. There's no need for that. This person is a stranger to us now. I won't ask my dad either. We refuse your request, Sissy. Then you'll at least take care of the kids, right? They are your dear grandchildren. It's going to be tough with the new baby coming, and it would really help if you could look after them. No matter what you say, I have no intention of helping you anymore. Let's go, Emily. Later, I heard rumors about Sullivan not even trying to find a job and their two restless children, crying and scattering food around. Surrounded by her family, Sissy gave birth to her third child. A few months later, frustrated, Emily's dad evicted the Sissy family for not paying rent. Curious about how they were settling into their new public housing, I sometimes went to check on them. I'm tired from job hunting. Sullivan would shout. You're just playing around with no money. Sissy retorted as neighbors stepped outside, sighing at yet another scene. Returning home, the smell of stew from the kitchen whet my appetite. Emily, noticing my return, ran over. You seem to be glowing today, Emily. Did something good happen? Actually, I'll announce it at dinner. When dinner time came, Christopher and Tim gathered in the dining room. Seeing Emily smiling more brightly than usual made everyone else naturally start smiling too. I have something to tell you. I'm finally pregnant. Congratulations, Emily. Christopher, silent, covered his face with his hands, his shoulders shaking. Come on, you're going to be a dad. And you, Mom, your face is all tear-streaked. What a wonderful night it was. Imagining our life as a family of 5, I couldn't stop my tears and smiles. Grandma, do you think she'll make it? Let's pray. Grandma's fighting hard. Until yesterday, my mother-in-law, Selena, who was lively and well, suddenly collapsed due to a heart attack. It was my niece, Jane, who lives with Selena in our family home, that found her. In front of the ICU, we prayed desperately, but despite our prayers, Selena passed away without returning to us. Selena had 4 children, including my husband, but they arrived at the family home the morning after she passed away. Despite my suspicions about the 4 of them, we somehow managed to get through the funeral. And then, 1 week after the funeral, as life was finally returning to normal, and I had sent my 2 children off to elementary school and preschool, and was watering the flowers in the garden, the mailman came. Among a few postcards, there was one slightly thicker envelope. What could this be? The handwriting on the envelope was familiar, and to my surprise, the sender was Selena. I rushed inside the house, took a deep breath, and opened the envelope, which contained a letter and something else. Please make sure the children do not notice this letter. The letter, which started with this line, was sent through her best friend, expressing gratitude towards me. Concern for the future of my children, Montague and Diamond, and also for Jane. Apart from the letter, there was another piece of paper with a map drawn on it. I hurriedly contacted Jane and headed to the location indicated on the map. I've always been helped by Selena until the end. Jane, I've made up my mind. Meadow, I'm supporting you. I had made a strong resolution. My name is Meadow. I live with my husband Frederick, my first-grade son Montague, and my 3-year-old daughter Diamond. I got married at 32, which wasn't too late, but it took a while before we could have children. I still remember how happy I was to finally be pregnant at 37, to the point of tears. With the pregnancy, I quit the company I had worked for 15 years since graduating from college. Although my colleagues were sorry to see me go, as a team leader, I was working overtime almost every day. And I couldn't imagine continuing to work while raising a child. I wanted to cherish the time with the child who had finally come to us. However, I also felt like quitting work would leave me behind in society, making it hard to make the decision. Once the kids start preschool and you have some time, you could work a little at our place. If you're family, you don't have to bow and scrape for sudden pickups, and it's more flexible. It was precisely when Selena, who ran a steakhouse, casually said these words that I was able to make up my mind to quit my job. Selena had lost her husband at a young age and raised 4 children on her own, a true matriarch through and through. Selena, doesn't this seem like a lot of food? You hit the jackpot. Eat up and work hard in the afternoon. She never sweated the small stuff. But she was more sensitive to others' feelings than anyone else. I remember how down I felt when I was struggling to get pregnant. Come on, look up. That's it. Stop by the shop before work starting tomorrow. Saying this, from the next day, she began giving me lunchboxes every day. Make sure you eat well. Being in good health is what's important. She never said it outright, but she took care to help me maintain a body more likely to conceive. My sister-in-law Wendy, sister-in-law Dream, and brother-in-law Melville all married and had children early, and by this time, Selena already had 11 grandchildren. Furthermore, she lived with Wendy, who had moved back home after a divorce, and her 3 children, while the Dream and Melville families lived nearby. Selena, who could see her 11 grandchildren anytime she wanted, must have been more than satisfied with them. Yet, she cried tears of joy for my pregnancy and childbirth. I have always had absolute trust in her, both in the past and now. 7 years have passed since I became a housewife, and with Diamond starting preschool, I decided to start working part-time at Selena's Steakhouse. Selena, listen to this. Montague broke his umbrella again on his way home. While doing the dishes, I vented to Selena about my children's misadventures. I was quite upset that he had broken 2 umbrellas in just a few months, but Selena seemed unfazed by the story. He wasn't being bullied, was he? No. He said he was competing with a friend to see who could dig deeper into the ground with their umbrella. It's good to have a competitive spirit. Plus, now he knows umbrellas are not for digging, right? Laughing along with Selena, I found myself smiling too. The frustration and annoyance from yesterday cleared away. A mother should indeed have this solid and unflappable presence. Being with Selena, I kept finding aspects to admire and emulate. She was my ideal image of a mother. By the way, Selena, do you have any plans for this Sunday? Nothing planned. Everyone's so busy these days. Selena looked a bit lonely. The grandchildren she lives with and those in the neighborhood are all in middle school or older now. They're busy with club activities and hanging out with friends, leaving little time for her. Well, Montague has been saying he wants to go to a sushi restaurant. Why don't we go together? I'd be so happy to see Montague and Diamond. Thank you for always inviting me. Selena's face softened. She dotes on Montague and Diamond a lot. The kids are very fond of her, too, and ideally, I'd love to take them to visit her at the family home more often. But with my sisters-in-law living there, it's not easy to just drop by. And having her come to our place isn't feasible either, as we don't have parking. So, Frederick and I decided to invite Selena out for meals or outings about once every 2 weeks, so she could spend time with our children. Eager to sit next to their beloved grandma, the kids always scrambled for the seat next to Selena. Watching them, Selena would smile warmly. Is Frederick working today, too? Yes. He's been really busy since he became a manager. I see. That's tough. Previously, Frederick would join us, but lately, his weekend work has increased, so it's been just the 3 of us going out with Selena. I wasn't too bothered by Frederick's absence, reasoning that work couldn't be helped and the kids weren't much trouble anymore. However, I couldn't ignore the somewhat lonely look that appeared on Selena's face. Next time, I'll make sure to invite us out on a day when Frederick isn't working. Selena looked surprised, then shook her head and smiled. Don't worry about that. I'm truly happy just to spend time with you all. Saying this, she pulled a small box from her bag. Selena smiled brightly and gently opened the box. This is my treasure box. This ring was given to me by Dad, and this necklace was my first purchase with my first paycheck. The treasure box filled with memories made me smile, too. What about this one in the bag? I pointed to a small drawstring bag. That, you can open when I say it's okay. Huh? Ehe. Selena laughed mischievously. I'll give you my treasure box, Meadow. I'm not at the age to dress up anymore. Saying that, Selena carefully closed the box and placed it in front of me. But, such important things. I want you to have them. To you, my precious daughter. Selena's words deeply touched me. I'll take good care of it. Mother-in-law. Selena smiled warmly and then gently hugged Montague, who was sitting next to her. That's not fair, only brother. Grandma, hug me later too. I'll give you a big hug once we're outside. Selena soothed Diamond, who puffed her cheeks out, with a tender look. Given how much love she showers not just on her grandchildren but also on me, her daughter-in-law, she must really cherish Frederick, her own child. Feeling a bit sad that Frederick seems unaware of the depth of his mother's love, I resolved to make sure Selena could see him the next time. However, that opportunity never came. On a holiday, I went out with the 2 children. Grandma will be here soon, right? We had invited Selena, but she had an appointment at the hair salon in the morning, so we arranged to meet at the lunch spot. Montague and Diamond stretched their necks, waiting eagerly for Grandma's arrival in front of the restaurant. But Selena didn't show up at the agreed time. I tried calling her several times, but she didn't answer. Being a professional, Selena always made it a point to answer the phone within 3 rings. This habit was ingrained in her, and she would instinctively answer within 3 rings even when not at her store. Yet today, she didn't pick up even after 10 rings. Knowing how reliable Selena was, if she was delayed at the hair salon, she would definitely have contacted us. What could have happened? I was getting worried. Even after waiting for 30 minutes, Selena was nowhere to be seen, and she still wasn't answering her phone. Hey, are we still waiting? I'm hungry. Me too. I want to eat now. As the children started to get cranky from hunger, I hesitated to enter the restaurant without Selena. Here, you can eat this gummy candy while we wait a bit longer for Grandma, okay? I handed out the gummies to the children and pondered. Could something have happened? Maybe I should go check her house. That's when my phone rang. Jane? The name displayed wasn't Selena's but Jane's, Wendy's youngest daughter. Hello, Jane, perfect timing. Is Grandma there? Meadow. What's wrong, Jane? I asked if Selena was at home, but over the phone, Jane sounded like she was crying, and her words were barely coming out. Grandma's collapsed. Meadow, what do we do? Jane's voice was tremulous and faint. Selena has? You can't be serious. I was at a loss for words. Jane seemed to be panicking, her sobbing audible over the phone. Snapping back to reality, I tried to calm her down. It's okay. Take a deep breath. Though I was quite shaken myself, I knew I had to stay calm as the adult, my hands trembling as I spoke. Where did Grandma collapse? In the entranceway. I'm calling an ambulance right now. Stay by her side, we're on our way. After hanging up, I immediately called for an ambulance to her house. Is something wrong with Grandma? Glancing over, I saw the children looking at me anxiously. It seems so. Let's go to Grandma's place, okay? I took the children's hands and headed for the parking lot. On the way, I stopped at a convenience store to buy hamburgers so the hungry kids could eat something in the car. Grandma likes plum. Saying so, Montague confidently added a hamburger for Selena to the basket. I'll share this chocolate with Grandma. Diamond innocently tossed the candy into the basket. Selena, wake up! For these kids, you have to pull through. I fervently hoped this. On our way to her house, Jane called to inform us that Selena was being taken to the university hospital. We rushed to the hospital. Arriving there, we found Jane sitting alone, hunched over in front of the ICU. Jane. Meadow. As soon as she lifted her face, tears streamed down Jane's cheeks. You did well on your own. It's okay now. I sat next to Jane and gently rubbed her back. After calming down a bit, Jane shared what happened when she found Selena. Jane, a 9th grader, said she was at club activities that morning. When she returned home before noon and tried to unlock the door, she found it already open. Feeling suspicious, she gently opened the door and discovered Selena collapsed. I'm sorry for calling all of a sudden. I couldn't get through to anyone else. You were the only one I could turn to, Jane said with an apologetic look. No, thank you for calling. We were supposed to have lunch with Grandma. And when she didn't show up past our meeting time and didn't answer her phone, I was really worried. But I never imagined she had collapsed. I regretted not heading to her house as soon as we couldn't get in touch. Then, a hospital staff member approached us. According to the staff, Selena had suffered a myocardial infarction and collapsed. Her condition was critical when she was brought in, and they were doing their best to treat her, but there was no guarantee she would survive. We need to contact everyone. Jane and I tried to call the relatives, but no one answered their phones. Why isn't anyone answering at a time like this? I was frustrated, especially since I couldn't even get through to Frederick. Lately, not only had he been working on weekends, but he also came home late on weekdays. He often came home slightly drunk. He said the drinking was for work or to cheer up his subordinates, but recently, it felt like he was neglecting his family. Selena wanted to see you. I got it. I'll make sure to join next time. Yet, on the morning of his day off, Frederick would say, something came up at work, and leave the house. Work or family, which is more important? This incident occurred amidst my growing frustrations with Frederick. Selena has collapsed and is in critical condition. Please contact us immediately. I sent this message, but there was no response from Frederick or his siblings. Is it normal for everyone to be this hard to reach? When I asked, Jane nodded. In our family, everyone does their own thing. It's always just Grandma and me for dinner. Is that so? I had no idea about this. At least, Selena had never mentioned it. According to Jane, her mother Wendy never took care of the house and would often disappear when the children were young. Selena had reprimanded Wendy many times. You are the mother of these 3 children. But Mom, you're better at housework and raising children than I am. Of course, I am. I raised 4 children. You'll get better if you do it every day. Selena tried to encourage Wendy to be more motherly, but Wendy continued to prioritize herself, coming and going as she pleased. Therefore, Selena, while working, tirelessly looked after Jane and her siblings with a smile. However, having grown up with such a mother, Jane's siblings now, apart from Jane, do not feel grateful towards Selena and leave the household responsibilities to her, living as they please. Now that I think about it, Selena always talked about Jane. I suddenly remembered. Jane's hamburgers are the best in the world, or when I started having trouble threading needles because of my farsightedness. Jane bought me a needle threader. Grandma always talked about Jane with a smile. Hearing my words, tears once again welled up in Jane's eyes. Will Grandma make it? Let's pray. Grandma's fighting. But despite our hopes, Selena passed away, leaving us behind. Looking at Selena lying on the bed, she seemed to be just sleeping with her usual gentle expression. Grandma, we bought you a hamburger. Let's eat chocolate together. The children, mistaking her for just sleeping, spoke to Selena. Grandma won't wake up anymore. She's gone to heaven. Where's heaven? Is it a nice place? It's a very nice place. Grandma must be happy meeting Grandpa there. Indeed, Selena must have finally met her husband whom she longed to see. I hoped they would spend their time together happily. With that thought, I couldn't find myself crying. We received explanations from the hospital about what would happen next and headed to the family home to prepare for the funeral. Even though it was already evening, nobody was at the family home. The kitchen was set up for dinner. It must be cream stew for tonight. The amount prepared was for a family of 5. Despite not knowing when everyone would return or if they would eat, Selena always prepared meals for the whole family. Till the end, I was deeply moved by Selena's kindness and greatness. Colleagues from Selena's steakhouse also came to the family home to help. We want to help in any way we can for Selena, they said, helping with the funeral preparations. While sharing memories of Selena, we brainstormed and proceeded with the preparations. Jane was the only one familiar with the house. But there were things even she, still a high school student, didn't know, making the preparations challenging. Wendy, whom we thought would return eventually, never came back, and there was no contact with any of the siblings-in-law. Although there was much to consider, my thoughts were only on Selena, and I took the initiative to act. Frederick and his siblings arrived at the family home the next morning. What have you been doing all this time? I gave Frederick a cold look. There was trouble at work. I was utterly dismayed that Frederick, even after his own mother passed away, still used work as an excuse. And it wasn't just him. From Wendy and the other siblings-in-law, there was no word of thanks for anything said about Selena or for the funeral preparations. Then, see you at the funeral. Call us anytime if you need anything. Sensing the odd atmosphere, the colleagues quietly left. During the funeral, Jane and I, despite our grief, fulfilled our duties as family members. But Selena's own children seemed indifferent and did not make any effort to participate. Thinking about these four disturbed my peace of mind. I focused on my last moments with Selena. A week after the funeral ended. As life slowly returned to normal and I had sent the two kids off to elementary school and preschool, I was watering the garden when the mailman arrived. Among a few postcards, there was one slightly thicker envelope. What could this be? The handwriting on the envelope was familiar, and surprisingly, the sender was Selena. I quickly went inside the house, took a deep breath, and opened the envelope, which contained a letter and something else. Please make sure the children do not notice this letter. The letter, starting with this line, was sent through her best friend, expressing gratitude towards me and concern for the future of Montague, Diamond, and Jane. Apart from the letter, there was another piece of paper with a map drawn on it. I hurriedly contacted Jane and headed to the location indicated on the map. I've been helped by Selena until the end. Jane, I've made up my mind. Meadow, I'm supporting you. I had made a strong resolution. A month later, we were called by a lawyer to the family home. Besides us, the Wendy family, Dream family, and Melville family were also gathered. It turned out that Selena had prepared a will during her lifetime and left it with the lawyer. In the will given by the lawyer, Wendy, Frederick, Dream, Melville, divide everything equally among the four of you. It was written. I thought I had no part in this, so I should go upstairs and take care of the children. Just as I was about to stand up, an unbelievable phrase caught my ear. She was a noisy old woman, but at least it was good she left us an inheritance. The voice belonged to Frederick. Really, it was worth putting up with everything. The four of them mocked Selena's memory. At that moment, my anger exploded. I no longer want anything to do with any of you. And that includes you. With that, I slammed a completed divorce application form on the table. The room fell silent. What's this all of a sudden? You've been living because of what I do, you know. Frederick glared at me sharply, but I glared back without backing down. The late nights and weekends weren't for work, but for your affairs, right? I have the evidence. I then spread out a private investigator's report on the table. In fact, the letter from Selena included a key to a coin locker located at the place marked on the map. When Jane and I opened the locker, we found a report on Frederick's affair. Selena must have felt something was off with Frederick's recent work on weekends. This must be a mother's intuition. Selena had secretly hired a detective agency to gather evidence of Frederick's infidelity. I was completely unaware of the affair, so I was truly amazed by Selena's actions. I don't want a share of the inheritance or compensation from the divorce trial. Just sign the divorce papers now. And never involve yourself with me or the children again. I couldn't bear to be with someone who disregards their family any longer. I spoke with increased fervor. Frederick's expression twisted for a moment, but then he smirked. Fine by me. I'll get to use Mom's inheritance all by myself. Works out better for me. He then filled out the divorce application without hesitation. Since the lawyer is here, it's better to get that promise in writing. Jane's voice came from the side. Right. Saying you don't want compensation from the divorce trial, then coming back crying later is exactly what I'd expect. That's my girl. Wendy praised Jane. Jane was actually advising me out of concern. Thinking this, I didn't retort but decided to have the lawyer draft a document outlining the divorce terms as Jane suggested. The discussion about the divorce was over, and I left the family home with the children. As I was leaving, I asked, The things I received from my mother-in-law during her lifetime aren't considered part of the inheritance, right? May I keep them as keepsakes? Those are just trinkets in a jewelry box, right? Please, feel free to take them. The four siblings, including Wendy, mocked Selena and seemed preoccupied with the inheritance, quickly wanting to dismiss me and the children, outsiders to them. After that, we headed straight to my parents' home. Welcome back. We've put your things in your room. I had informed my parents about Frederick's affair and my decision to divorce him as soon as I found out. Considering the children, I thought about moving within their current school district despite being jobless. But my family lived in a different state. Children adapt quickly, you know. Encouraged by my father's words, I decided to temporarily return to my parents' home. It was immediately clear that this was the right decision. Visits to my parents' home were rare, maybe once a year. Though initially tense about living with my parents, the children quickly grew fond of them. Grandpa, let's play catch. Montague, unlike with Frederick, who rarely spent time with him, started playing catch with my dad, who showed him affection. Grandma, what's this flower? Diamond, who had been missing Selena, began to enjoy the garden flowers with my mom, knowledgeable about plants. They gradually adjusted to their new schools, and we started a modest yet peaceful life. About 3 months later, I received a call from Frederick. Did you deceive us? He seemed to be talking about the jewelry box I had received from Selena before she passed. I heard from Wendy. There were expensive jewels inside that box. In fact, besides the evidence of the affair, there was another letter in the coin locker. That letter mentioned the jewelry box Selena gave me before her passing. Selena said, "It's okay." When I was told I could open the drawstring bag I had been given permission to open. It contained a gemstone called Alexandrite, and the value of the gemstone was about $500,000. This gem allowed me to decisively move forward with the divorce from Selena. Apparently, Wendy had eavesdropped on a conversation between me and Jane, discovering the existence of the gem. That's why I asked clearly, didn't I? If it was okay to keep what mother-in-law gave me before she passed. That's sneaky. Even over the phone, I could tell Frederick was furious. It wasn't surprising, considering they were now burdened with dividing not just the inheritance, but also the debt among themselves. I had been completely unaware of the debt. Later, Jane told me over the phone that Selena had taken a $500,000 loan 5 years ago for renovations to her shop. If she hadn't purchased the jewel for me, she wouldn't have needed to take on such a massive debt. But this was a testament to Selena's kindness. Grandma always appreciated how kind you were to her, Meadow. Since her own sons and daughter were so distant, she was even happier that you became part of the family. Selena had wanted to express her gratitude to me, and she intended to work off the $500,000 debt herself. If Frederick and his siblings had been kinder to Selena, perhaps she wouldn't have felt the need to leave them with such a burden. They had truly brought this upon themselves. I hoped they would reflect deeply on their actions. After the divorce, Frederick and his siblings tried to contact me several times. But thanks to the agreement we made during the divorce, I managed to fend them off. Not only Frederick but other brothers contacted me. Next time you contact me, I will consult the police. After I told them that, all contact from them suddenly stopped. According to Jane, the siblings finally realized they needed to sort out their issues on their own. Now, they're embroiled in a dispute over whether to sell the family home. Wendy wants to continue living there rent-free, while Frederick and the others want to sell it to alleviate some of the debt. The four of them seemed to get along well when they were making fun of Frederick. But in the end, all four of them can only think about themselves. Despite everything, I felt truly relieved to have distanced myself from such people. The only person I've kept in touch with is Jane. She moved for university and, coincidentally, started living alone near my parents' home. Montague, I'll help you with your homework. Yay! I love Sister Jane because she's so kind. Jane, with her kind heart, is now studying to become a nurse, aiming to help people just like her grandmother did. Although she can't rely on her mother Wendy, Jane has been working hard, earning a scholarship for tuition exemption and covering her living expenses with part-time jobs and scholarships. When Jane decided on her university, I offered to sell the gem to help with her expenses, but she refused. I want to show Grandma that I can live my life well, with a respectable job on my own strength. Hearing Jane's determination, I decided to quietly support her in her journey. Jane, with her kindness and strong will, she is sure to become a wonderful woman like Selena. When that time comes, I plan to give her a portion of the money from selling the gemstone. After all, Jane was the only grandchild who stayed by Selena's side throughout. And now, I'm also looking for work, trying not to be outdone by Jane. I'm considering starting my own business, something that can be balanced with parenting, and my plans are gradually taking shape. This is all thanks to the jewelry box that Selena left behind. I intend to use some of the initial funds for startup costs, but ultimately want to support my children with the money I earn myself. I want to go to Finland to see the aurora. Montague's eyes sparkle as he solves his homework with a world map drawn on it. Recently, he's been very fond of the globe he received as a gift, eagerly sharing his knowledge about the countries of the world. I want to meet Santa Claus. I'd prefer somewhere warm, like Hawaii. Everyone dreams of their own desired destinations. That's it. I'll use the money Selena left behind to take the children and Jane to the places they want to visit. Surely, it will be an enriching experience that broadens their horizons. Just imagining it fills me with excitement. Selena, thanks to you, we can spend our days with smiles on our faces. Please continue to watch over us. My name is Sophie. I've been a housewife for 3 years now, married. My husband Tim works for a top-tier company as a businessman, and we live on the 20th floor of a high-rise apartment. The night view from our living room is incredibly beautiful, but being raised in the countryside, I initially wanted in a lower-floor apartment when we first got married. However, I agreed to accommodate my husband's wish to live in a high-rise. We both belonged to the same tennis club in college. Tim, 2 years my senior, was a leader, whereas I joined somewhat casually and was a rather inconspicuous member. Back then, Tim had a girlfriend, so we weren't that close during college. But, a couple of years after I graduated and started working at a law firm, I ran into Tim by chance at a bar. Feeling nostalgic, we chatted about old times and exchanged contact information. Both of us were single at the time, so we gradually began to date. Tim was as sociable as ever with a wealth of topics, and I often found myself listening to his stories. Working at a top-tier company, Tim faced a lot of stress, so dating me seemed to be a source of encouragement for him. After dating for about a year and a half, Tim proposed to me. I had just started my 3rd year at the law firm and acquired my paralegal certification, and I wanted to continue working even after marriage, but I earn enough for us to live comfortably. I want you, Sophie, to stay at home, he said, so I resigned from my job upon marrying him. I never disliked cooking or housekeeping, even when I lived alone, so I enjoyed my days as a housewife. With no financial worries and living in a high-rise, even my parents and friends envied me. So, I focused on making sure Tim could concentrate on his work, carefully planning meals with balanced nutrition and cleaning diligently every day. Then, one day, as Tim was enjoying his favorite hamburger steak at the dinner table, he cheerfully said, "We've been invited to dinner by the couple living on the top floor." Eh? That stunningly handsome and beautiful couple who looks like celebrities? Yeah, exactly. I sometimes see the husband at the gym downstairs. We're the same age, which surprised me. Our high-rise has a community gym on the second floor. I'm not fond of machine workouts and only occasionally go for yoga, but Tim, who loves exercise, goes 2 or 3 times a week. Really? That intelligent-looking man with glasses? Yeah. He's an IT company CEO, apparently. Well, living on the top floor, he must be doing well. Then, should we book a fancy restaurant for the dinner? No, we've been invited to their place. Tim explained that he bumped into the couple at the apartment entrance today and got invited. Sophie, they said they'd like you to come too. Is that okay? I've only exchanged brief greetings with them. It's an invitation, so why not? Besides, I'm curious about the top floor. Tim, who can easily socialize with anyone, said. On the other hand, I, being shy, wasn't too keen on the idea. I wondered if it was just a polite gesture from them. But before I knew it, the plan became a reality, and we were visiting them this weekend. I brought some simple homemade dishes, but the couple had a professional chef cook for us. It was my first experience of such a luxury, so I felt overwhelmed. However, Wendy, the wife, was friendly and easy to talk to, and by the end of the meal, I felt as comfortable as with a friend. Excited, we talked about our experience. Even after returning from Wendy's place. I haven't had such a good chat in a long time, it was truly enjoyable. Becoming a housewife meant I didn't get to see my friends as much, so meeting Wendy was a delightful event for me. Maybe you could go for lunch with her sometimes? Wendy doesn't seem to work every day. And having a chef at home, that's just on another level. Wendy worked as a freelance designer, handling wallpaper and curtain designs, and seemed to have her own clientele, working at her own pace. I often work from home, so let's have tea together sometime. She suggested as we were leaving. Yeah, she's as beautiful as a movie star, but so approachable and genuinely nice. I'd be happy to become friends with her. Yeah, she really is beautiful. Probably the most beautiful woman I've ever met. Really? Saying that in front of me? No, it's different. Sophie, you're cute, right? It's a different type. You don't have to explain so desperately. I know myself well enough. I made a slightly pouting face, but seeing Tim's wry smile, I burst into laughter. Seeing me laugh, Tim joined in. It had been a while since we had such a lively atmosphere, joking around. Maybe it was all thanks to meeting the Wendy couple. But little did I know then, this encounter would lead to an incredible challenge. Since then, Tim and I haven't visited Wendy's place together, but Wendy and I became close enough to frequently meet for lunch or tea. One of my worries was that Tim and I were unable to have children. I was considering fertility treatment but couldn't bring myself to discuss it with Tim. I could openly share these feelings with Wendy, though. Fertility treatment can be tough. Maybe it's okay to leave things to nature for a while? Yeah, maybe. But somehow, I feel like Tim isn't that keen on having children. I see. It's tough, isn't it, the feelings between a couple? In my case, it's the opposite. My husband wants kids, but I'm not so enthusiastic. Really? Yeah. I had a miscarriage before. After that experience, I thought maybe it's okay not to try to get pregnant again. Oh, I'm sorry. That was insensitive of me. No, don't worry about it. It's all in the past now. Seeing Wendy's smiling response, I thought how strong she was. You're right. I should just let nature take its course for a bit. I need to cherish the happiness I have now. Wendy's expression seemed to cloud over for a moment as she looked at my smiling face. Shall we head back? I have a design I need to think about by tomorrow. I nodded to Wendy's always graceful demeanor, wondering if I had just imagined that brief change. But from that day on, every time we met, Wendy seemed to be getting thinner. One day, concerned, I asked her, Wendy, is something troubling you? I might not be able to solve it, but I'm here to listen if you want. Thank you. Actually, my husband and I are talking about divorce. What? I was speechless with shock. They had seemed so happy when Tim and I visited their home. What could have happened? Sophie, you're the only one I can talk to. What should I do? Wendy began to speak slowly, tears in her eyes. It seems my husband really wanted children. We've had arguments before, but I never imagined he was having an affair. According to Wendy, her husband was involved with a colleague at work. He had told her he would pay compensation for a divorce. Can you believe it? Before we were married, other men proposed to me too. He worked so hard every day to win me over, and now he wants to leave? What am I supposed to do now? It's shocking. I shouldn't interfere in your marriage, but maybe you should talk to your husband again? While feeling a bit uneasy about Wendy's situation, I chose my words carefully to avoid hurting her. After pouring her heart out to me, she whispered, "Things will surely work out." And then Wendy left. That evening at dinner, I opened up to Tim about Wendy and her husband's situation. How is Wendy's husband doing lately? That's the thing, I haven't seen him recently. He hasn't been at the gym for about a week now. Is that so? But he didn't seem like the type to cheat. What are you talking about? It's always the serious, intellectual types that turn out to be the worst. Initially, Tim had praised him for being an IT company CEO, but his sudden change of attitude made me feel uneasy. Within a month, Wendy came to tell me they were getting a divorce. Oh, what should I say? It's okay. I've come to terms with it. For now, I'll be staying here. Alone? Yes. I arranged that as part of the conditions of the divorce. Kind of like a compensation. Seeing Wendy so nonchalant about it scared me. Can people really change this much in such a short time? Still, knowing it wasn't my place to comment on their decision, I continued my friendship with Wendy as before. However, not long after this incident, cracks began to appear in my own marriage with Tim. Tim started coming home later than before and often went out on weekends. He claimed he was working overtime or attending business drinking parties, but sometimes he wouldn't contact me until after midnight, and I had to confront him about it. Tim, I understand that work is busy, but isn't it too much lately? What do you mean? What are you trying to say? Is it really just work? What else would it be? Of course, it's work. Then, at least let me know when you'll be late. I prepare meals and everything. Huh. Sometimes, a sudden client dinner comes up. I have more responsibilities at work now. Being a housewife who plays at home, you wouldn't understand. I was half astonished by Tim's selfish reasoning. Wasn't it Tim who wanted me to stay home in the first place? I thought I was making our daily life comfortable for him. Ignoring my opinion, Tim just walked away to his bedroom. We had started sleeping in separate bedrooms a few months ago, per Tim's request. I need proper sleep for work, he had said, but our intimate life had also disappeared, making me suspect he might be seeing someone else. Tired of having negative thoughts at home every day, I considered returning to work. So, I discussed this with Wendy. It's not just me going through this, huh? I haven't confirmed he's cheating, but I'm tired of suspecting him every day. That's why I'm thinking of going back to my old job. That sounds good. I think you should work. Besides, I have a feeling Tim might have found someone else. Wendy's words about someone else stuck in my mind. Maybe, but until I hear it from him, I've decided not to press the issue anymore. Wendy, thanks for listening. I'll try my best to get back into employment. Wendy nodded slowly, giving me her usual graceful smile. The next day, I went to the law firm where I used to work. There, I found out that Georgie, the lawyer I used to work for as a paralegal, had left the firm. Apparently, he had opened a detective agency a year ago. He was the one who taught me various job skills since my first year as a professional. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that it was thanks to him I became a paralegal. Wanting to discuss my future career, I decided to visit his detective agency. Georgie, long time no see. Surprised you came all this way. It's been a while, hasn't it? Since your wedding, so about 3 years? It's been that long already. You helped me so much. No problem. So, what brings you here today? What happened? As I discussed my intention to return to work, I ended up honestly sharing my marital troubles and suspicions that my husband might have a mistress. Our office is a detective agency, quite different from your previous job. How about working here? Really? Yeah, we're actually short-handed and we're just thinking of hiring someone. We've been quite busy since we started, receiving investigation requests from the law firm I used to work at. Income is more than double what I earned as a lawyer. I can offer you a similar salary to before. Of course, this job isn't always pleasant. There are times when the pay doesn't even add up to $3 an hour. Georgie, you're incredible. But why did you decide to quit being a lawyer? Maybe I wanted to change my life, Georgie said, looking distant as if recalling those days. Then, looking me straight in the eyes, he continued. I think it's important for you to start a new life by investigating Tim and uncovering the truth. Something inside me seemed to overflow at his words. Nodding. I'll pay the investigation fee, please do it. I quickly replied. The next day, I met Wendy at our usual cafe for lunch and told her about my new job. I didn't mention it was a detective agency, just said it was an investigation office opened by my former boss. The pay might be less than $3 an hour for some tasks, but I feel like I can utilize my previous experience. I'll give it my best. That's great. I'm rooting for you. I'm thinking of going on a trip tomorrow for a change of scenery. You've been through a lot, Wendy. Enjoy your trip. Thank you. Wendy responded with an even brighter smile than usual. That was the last day I saw my friend Wendy. A few days later, Georgie called me in to report the investigation results, and I was in disbelief. Tim's mistress was Wendy. Their affair had been going on for over a year. That meant they were already involved when our families had a dinner together. I can't believe it. Wendy was so kind, listening to all my troubles. Probably just a fling at first. But Wendy's husband must have noticed. Inviting you over might have been a warning to Tim. I don't know what Wendy told you, but her husband is a serious man, not the type to have affairs. Unbelievable. I was so shocked I couldn't say anything more. There's plenty of evidence. You could get a significant amount of compensation. Tim's on a business trip now, right? Yes. After managing to reply, something struck me, and I looked at Georgie. He nodded solemnly, placing a photograph in front of me. It showed Tim and Wendy entering a resort hotel together. They were on a trip. Eventually, Tim and I divorced. I didn't ask for compensation, instead, I cited irreconcilable differences as the reason of the divorce. Leaving the house, I started working, renting a room in the building of the detective agency. Tim and Wendy remarried without any remorse. Are you really okay with this? Georgie asked me, but for me, it was all according to plan. However, I never thought I'd witness it with my own eyes. A year later, I unexpectedly ran into my ex-husband, Tim. It's been a while. How's work going? I heard it's like $3 an hour. Well, keep at it. He spoke in a mocking tone, and I replied. After a year, you still know nothing. What do you mean? Why don't you ask Wendy? Tim left with a look of dissatisfaction, but that night, he called me in a frenzy. Did you know about this? Know what? That Wendy is buried in debt. Wendy had always been a big spender. Though she claimed to be a designer, she didn't really make much. I knew. I knew you were involved with her for over a year while still married to me. Oh, and one more thing. While you were dating her, she miscarried a child from another boyfriend. That's a lie, right? You knew everything and still married her because you loved her, right? Good luck with that. Bye. I hung up and immediately blocked Tim's number. You finally put a period in that chapter of your life. You did well. Georgie, who had overheard the conversation, spoke to me gently. I couldn't hold back my tears. It was the first time I cried since the divorce. Georgie, without saying a word, just held me. After that, Georgie and I became the best partners, both in work and personal life. Apparently, he had been in love with me since we first met. Now, I love him very much too. Tim, on the other hand, ended up filing for bankruptcy because he couldn't pay off Wendy's huge debts. He couldn't stay at his company and now works for a delivery service. This isn't what I signed up for. He spends his days dealing with Wendy, who constantly complains. They betrayed people without a second thought, but will they ever realize the consequences of their actions? I'm Vivian, 27 years old, and a pregnant woman about to give birth soon. My husband Bobby is 3 years older than me, a bit selfish, but I've always relied on him as I'm indecisive. However, being pregnant made me realize that boyfriends and husbands are different, and so are husbands and fathers. As a boyfriend, I appreciated him taking the lead, but as a married couple, it felt different. He just wouldn't listen to others. Whenever I gave an opinion, he would negate it, insisting he was always right. And now, as I'm trying to change into a mom, he still hasn't quite become a husband. He seems to hold the reins in our relationship. His values are, frankly, quite outdated. Sure, some couples work well that way. I've heard that was how it used to be. Husbands would earn a lot, allowing wives to focus solely on housework and childcare. But his salary isn't something to brag about. In fact, I was earning more before my maternity leave. I kept quiet about it though, to avoid upsetting him. He spends as much as he has, so we still keep our savings separate. I've been saving bit by bit, so I can manage the expenses even during maternity leave, something he doesn't seem to grasp. He probably thinks he's supporting me with his income alone. Likely, it's the influence of his parents. His mother has always been a housewife, with his father as the sole earner. That's fine. Both of his parents respect each other. I got that impression when I met them. A wife supporting her husband, and a husband supporting his wife, made it work. In our case, Bobby seems to look down on me. I don't mind him emulating Fael, but I wish he'd learn how to treat his wife as well. When Emael, Wallace, gave birth, Fael supported her as best he could and was proactive in childcare. Even at our first meeting, they seemed like a great couple, the kind I wanted us to be. With my due date being around Christmas, I wonder whether we should go to the in-laws' house. Then, an incident occurred at the end of the year, just before giving birth. In the afternoon, Bobby called from work. Today's the last day of work before the holiday, so after I'm done, my colleagues will come over for drinks. Wait a minute, my due date is soon, right? You can't predict when the baby will come, at least go out to drink somewhere else. Faced with this unbelievable suggestion, I was at a loss for words. What? Are you trying to annoy me? I've already told my colleagues. Don't embarrass me. You always said, don't bring anyone over at the last minute. I told you first thing in the morning. Mom said she gave birth to me 2 days after her due date, and my sister was born a week late. So, a due date is just a guideline. That varies from person to person. Sure, a due date is just a prediction, but we need to be cautious around that time. That's exactly what Wallace said when I announced my pregnancy. But she also said, it would be so much easier if babies would just listen to us before they're born. Bobby apparently not paying attention to that. Continued after a click of his tongue. So, I'll stay home when the due date comes. Don't use pregnancy as an excuse to tie me down. I didn't see your messages today, so clean the house by the time I get back. It was messy when I left this morning. Don't embarrass me, and prepare food and drinks, okay? Remember to keep your promises. Wait, I'm pregnant. I can't even clean up. Remember I asked you to do it yesterday? The mess was because you didn't clean up. He seemed to recall and then got angry. You're a housewife, right? You're being supported, so don't make me do housework. Just do it already. Saying that, he hung up. The mess he was referring to was actually made by him yesterday. He had brought colleagues home just before returning once before. I did ask him to inform me in the morning, but I never expected him to do this, especially not so close to the due date. My belly weighs about 3 kilos now, putting pressure on my organs. You wouldn't understand unless you've been through it. I didn't understand until I got pregnant. My sister-in-law, who's already had a baby, keeps in touch frequently. I feel blessed to share these hardships with her. Wallace reminisces about the past and brings things I need, and Fael helps out too. The in-laws' house is really nice. The baby in my belly, perhaps worried about me, kicks me repeatedly. It felt like a sign not to comply with his demands. So, I called his office. The person who answered passed the call to him. Hello, Bobby? It's impossible today. My belly's been kicked so much, I just can't move. What? Don't call for something like that. I'll drink at a colleague's place then. Don't call the office again. It's embarrassing, cut it out. At least clean up. If you don't, it's divorce, understand? All I could hear was the cold electronic tone in my ear. I couldn't believe he was this terrible. Lately, he has been using divorce as a threat for everything. He thinks I'm afraid of divorce now that we have a baby. He uses it to make me anxious. According to him, it's discipline. The only reasons I haven't divorced him are the possibility of change after the baby's birth and the in-laws' presence. How can someone from such a good family turn out like this? Knowing Sael, it's definitely not the parents-in-law's upbringing. It must be his friend's influence. At our wedding, one of his friends said, "Keep your wife in check." After that, he started acting more arrogantly towards me. Since the wedding, he has been acting even more bossy towards me. Just then, the phone rang at the perfect time, and I answered it. Hello, Vivian, how are you feeling? Wallace, it's not my body, it's my mood that's terrible. Wallace sounded a bit panicked over the phone. The due date is Christmas, right? You might feel like you have a lot to do, but prioritize your baby and yourself first. Thank you. But the problem isn't that. I'm sorry to say, but I might end up divorcing. I don't want to part from you guys, but I've reached my limit with this incident. I couldn't hold back my tears anymore. Wallace sounded frantic on the other end. What happened all of a sudden? Can you explain? Bobby called earlier, saying he's bringing colleagues home tonight. He told me to clean up and buy drinks and prepare. If I can't do that, he said it's divorce. So, I guess there's no other choice but to divorce. I've been threatened like this for a while now. Even the usually cheerful Wallace was silent, listening. I'm sorry I didn't notice. Bobby told me you were going to give birth near your parents' home. What? I'm not at my parents', I'm at our house. I didn't understand why he would lie about that, but her response clarified it. That's why I've been giving him money every day, as he said he could eat properly. I should have taught him housework to reduce your burden. That's my responsibility too. No, she did teach him. It's clear from how Sael is. He just chose to escape. Even Fael does the household himself. Really? I didn't know that. I'm sorry. I almost became an ungrateful wife without knowing the situation. No, it's our fault too. If you're not at your parents', we're neglectful parents. We should have helped more. When he gets drunk, he won't get away with it. I'll give him a piece of my mind next time. I was relieved to have a mother-in-law who would stand up for her son's wife like this. Thank you. I'm really happy I can rely on you, Wallace. You're like a real mom to me now. I lost my mother early, so her friendliness meant a lot to me. I'm feeling okay for now, so I'll try to clean up. I'll order the drinks for delivery and take a break once it's done. Don't push yourself too hard. If anything happens, I'll come right away. After I finished cleaning and was taking a break, he came back home. The party was mostly his colleagues being considerate, but a drunk Bobby started giving orders. Hey, we're out of drinks, bring some more. As he said this, a colleague went to get them, but that only made him angrier. Don't use my colleague, you've embarrassed me again. His colleagues, looking disdainful, soon said they had to leave. Fortunately, it was the holiday season, so there were plenty of excuses. As they left, he passed out, and I saw them out. One of them apologized profusely as they were leaving. We heard you were pregnant, but didn't expect you to be at home. Please take care of yourself. And stopped me as I tried to follow them to the door. After that, I don't remember much for a while. Later, Wallace told me she couldn't get through on the phone and found me unconscious when she arrived. She had called an ambulance in a hurry. I regained consciousness on a hospital bed. Still feeling weak, I decided to keep my eyes closed and rest a bit. Just then, the door to the hospital room opened. What the hell, you're sleeping soundly. I rushed here for nothing. The house is still a mess, nobody's there, and I get a message to come to this hospital? You've embarrassed me in front of my colleagues. It's definitely divorce now. In fact, wake up already, I need you to sign the divorce papers. The juniors were disgusted with you. A wife who can't even prepare properly, maybe I should divorce you quickly without you noticing the affair. That way, I can marry my girlfriend. No alimony, huh? Am I a genius or what? No, you're an idiot, I wanted to shout, but I had to pretend not to notice and gather evidence. But how? Just then, Bobby's mobile phone chimed with a notification. He looked puzzled. Why am I getting a message from Vivian? What? I'm keeping Vivian's phone? Take care of your wife if you want it back. Who is this, some creepy person? Take care of my wife, like I don't need her. Thinking I was unconscious, he kept talking. Ever since getting pregnant, she's gotten lazy with housework, doesn't care about her appearance, and just keeps getting fatter. That's natural, I thought, I'm pregnant with your baby. I need nutrition for two. The doctor even said my weight gain was appropriate. He probably doesn't know that. Ah, if only my mobile phone was nearby, I could have recorded this. And to think he's having an affair too. His morals are skewed, but so is that woman. Would you be able to forgive yourself if you were in the same position? Is it even right to engage in adultery with a straight face when your beloved's baby is about to be born? In the first place, is it right to commit adultery? Hey, is the person messaging actually her affair partner? That would make sense, huh? So she having an affair too? What ridiculous reasoning. Does he have the brain of an elementary school detective? People who cheat always think their partner is doing the same. Bobby must know he's in the wrong. There's only one truth, and no justification for infidelity. Then his phone rang again. Huh? I'm not the affair partner? Is this guy psychic? Then who is it? Strangers shouldn't meddle in our business. Who's a stranger? This is a family matter. The door opened, and Wallace barged in. What? Why's Mom here? Why wouldn't I be? I sent the message. Bobby seemed flustered by this unexpected visitor. No way, you came all the way from home? I didn't think you would be here, let alone have Vivian's phone. Don't tell me, Mom, you've been brainwashed with lies to excuse her laziness, right? She began to speak quietly, regretting what he had done. I've been listening to everything you've said since entering this room, using the mobile phone there. He looked where she was pointing and seemed shocked. She had hidden her phone in the gap of my bed and connected a call to my phone. The recording function was also used, so the affair was fully exposed. The worst part is, you neglected Vivian, who's risking her life to give birth to your baby, to mess around. You don't deserve to be a dad. It was an impulse. Vivian hadn't been paying attention to me for a while. Just then, one of my junior female colleagues was, well, giving me attention. Hearing those words, I reached my limit and sat up, shouting, "Don't joke with me. I'm trying to give birth with all my might. And you play around on a whim?" He, finding no words to reply, looked down in silence. "You have acted despicably. If you mention divorce, I have no choice but to accept it. When it happens, I'll be on her side. I almost died giving birth to you. I've told you this before. Your sister can't forgive your actions as a woman either. She just gave birth recently too." He made a face as if to say, crap. Doesn't he understand that when having an affair? "But look, I rushed here as soon as she woke up. The affair was a momentary lapse. I swear I won't do it again. I really wasn't myself. I won't invite work colleagues home anymore. I'll end the affair and give all my salary to you. Please, consider this my last chance." Saying this, he kept apologizing. I smiled and called out to him, "Bobby." Hearing my voice, he looked at me, as if relieved of his guilt. "Thank you, Vivian. I'll really change." "What are you misunderstanding? This was your last chance." Understanding my words, his face shifted from relief to despair. "By the way, Dad, me, and your sister haven't forgiven you. Dad even said, don't come home even if you divorce. Basically, you're disowned. I think that's only fair." "No way, give me a break. Where am I supposed to go?" He grasped at her feet as if begging. "Bobby, you neglected your wife who's about to give birth, had an affair, invited colleagues home, and sent her to the grocery store. That's 2 strikes for me and Dad. So there's still..." Before he could finish, I spoke. No. Sister-in-law makes it 3 strikes, and I'm the game set. We'll divorce once the baby is born. As for the broken promise, make sure you pay alimony and child support as a dad. I need to be a father to the baby. Don't divorce me. I'll give you all my money. I'll lose my position at work." Even now, he seemed more concerned about saving face. "That's fine. Your work colleagues have already contacted me while you were on your way here. Remember when you invited them home without notice and gave out my contact? Someone I didn't recognize called, saying they were supposed to come today. I didn't know the situation, thought your wife went back to her parents. It'll probably be gossip after the holiday season. Please, explain to them it's a misunderstanding." Still seeking self-preservation, he didn't seem to care about me. "Misunderstanding? It's the truth. The baby will be raised by me, my parents, and your family. We all agreed unanimously. By now, and make sure you keep your promises this time." This was what Bobby had told me over the phone. "Her parents, your dad and sister, are coming soon. Take responsibility for your actions. We'll apologize for our son's misconduct at the end. Then we'll make sure she and the baby don't suffer. We won't be lenient. We'll front the money, but this isn't for you, it's for her. Work hard at Dad's friend's workplace to pay it back. You won't be comfortable at your current job anyway. You have no choice." "Fine, I'll figure out the money. I'll remarry my girlfriend. She loves me. She's making money online streaming, something about relationship advice. Love Me channel, that's it. I'll join her and make a fortune. Then I'll be a billionaire. Planning all alone, how foolish." "Well, good luck with that, you're a fool till the end. Wallace, it's fine. Bye now." Bobby left cheerfully, but with trembling feet. He fled before Fael and Sael arrived. The next day, I gave birth to a healthy baby girl. I had a lawyer handle the alimony and child support claims. Of course, I claimed from his girlfriend too. I continued interacting with my ex-husband's parents, and after settling into motherhood, I received alimony from Bobby. He refused the advance from FIL and borrowed from consumer finance. And it seems, from shady places too. He thought he could repay quickly with his girlfriend's earnings. But reality isn't so sweet. His girlfriend left her job after their relationship became known at the company, making things awkward. The incident of him drinking at home spread around his company, and he quit. His last hope, the streaming, leaked somewhere, and the channel disappeared due to the affair despite being about relationship advice. Doing bad things doesn't pay off. Who leaked it? Sael was giving a thumbs up, but it must be my imagination. If he hadn't mentioned the channel name, maybe it wouldn't have gone this far. In the end, he couldn't pay back and is now missing. My daughter and I will surely be lovingly raised by two wonderful families.